Immediately that I started the challenge, I started to feel worried, like really afraid. I knew that I wasn't going to starve, because for the longest time I'd been a busker. I'd worked my way through like university holidays as a face painter or a street artist. I'd always been able to generate work for myself quite independently without relying on having to get employment. So I knew I wouldn't starve, but yet I still felt like I was going to die. If I ran out of money, I felt like I was going to die. And that was how I knew that it was a sort of an internal fear. It wasn't. I always think there's a difference between perceived fears and a danger sense. A danger sense is definitely something to follow. Get your head out of that lion's mouth now. But so some types of fears that are just getting in the way, they're stopping us from doing something which is good for us because of a perceived fear. And I was really curious about that with money. And I was so curious that I immediately began to feel afraid because I'd agreed to this challenge. I'd done it publicly so that, if I'd have a lot of people to answer to if I didn't follow it through. And I immediately started to feel that. And yet I really wanted to challenge it. I mean, I'd done my fixed gear bike challenge of 2012, which was about challenging the idea you have to have a car. And I'd lived in a yurt that started mid-2012 and lasted 6 months purely, and then on and off for the next year after that. And that was challenging the idea of you have to rent or buy a flat. And here I was trying to challenge the idea, no matter how hard you work, you'll always have to worry about running out of money. I didn't want to always have to worry about running out of money, and I was feeling this despite not being in poverty. Poverty being so little resources that your basic needs are not met. I wasn't in that situation, and yet I still felt this fear. And that's in a way very natural. In a way you could say it's a danger sense. As your funds get lower, you think, oh, this is dangerous. But it felt like it was beyond that. It felt like it was way beyond that. Now, I started with £232 in the bank account. So I thought that's just going to take a couple of weeks to run out, really. And I was watching myself wanting to spend it all. I want to spend it all quickly so that I can get to zero, build my way up, and then I'll be able to prove that I'm resourceful and self-sufficient in the world. And I also wanted to save it. I was like, no, don't run out. Make sure you spend as little as possible. And I would flick between these two states. And that's funny because, I think it's always been that way. I went to the Money Museum. There was an exhibition inside the British Museum. The first thing that was written about money, like the very first panel, said pretty much as soon as money was invented, people were borrowing it. So it's different from livestock. You can't bury livestock in the ground and then dig it up later like treasure. But we've always been obsessed with treasure, gold, going to pirates are going off to find gold that they'd buried somewhere. The idea of being so rich you don't have to worry about money. It's always been there. But it's created by money, which is wealth, which is perceived to be solid. And that's really funny because it's continued on into this time period where money's actually digital. It's not very solid at all, and it fluctuates all the time depending on lots of things that most of us don't understand. So there I was sort of feeling like this experiment is stripping back the truth. Even 1 hour into saying I'll take the challenge, I was feeling like, oh God, I'm so disempowered. I feel so vulnerable. I feel so not in charge of my own destiny. And yet I was stripping back the truth about myself, about how I felt about my own survival. And I was also stripping back the truth about money, looking for like the core of that. As you can tell from these videos already, from what I've said so far, a big thing for me was self-sufficiency. I really wanted to feel that I could survive and that I wasn't at the mercy of the whole world as to whether I both had enough or that the things that I had to do to have enough were okay with me. Like, would they make me unhappy? The things that I had to do to have enough, work. A lot of people are unhappy in work. And that's something that you do for a lot of your week. So it's a really big deal. What actually happened is it took me 6 weeks to run out of money. Bearing in mind, normally I'd spend £100 a week and I only started with just over 200. So how on earth did that happen? Well, several things happened. Firstly, I discovered I wasn't self-sufficient. And the challenge was really about finding that out. We have a very individualistic society where we think that we're either self-sufficient or we're dependent or we're codependent. And what's missing from that is interdependence, community, a positive form of interacting with each other, exchanging and supporting each other. And that's what I discovered as my money started to decline. But also, I had this massive fear around having no work booked. I mustn't seek any work until my money runs out. That was my rule. And it really revealed one of my fears, to discover that actually not seeking work and not being offered work were actually different things. So I was really thrown when very quickly after announcing the £0 challenge, I was offered work. Just a little bit of work. I was offered work from my friend who's disabled. Her enabler had cancelled. She knew that because of the £0 challenge I was actually free because she knew I wasn't working, and she called me and said, "Can you do a day or two?" So I was just thrown. I thought, oh, I hadn't factored this into my rules, and the fact that I haven't factored it into my rules shows me that I just was so worried about money that I thought that if I wasn't constantly looking for work, it would never come to me. And so I thought, okay, challenge number 1. So I took the work.